we do have a foundation in emo music. That's, emo, hardcore, post-hardcore, punk, everything else. The album we made that, introduced us to the world was very much in that space, being like wearing your emotions. What's the expression? Wearing it on your sleeve, when we were influenced by bands like Saves the Day and Motion City Soundtrack and other bands that like lyrically got into some real imagery, so that's the foundation there. And this album and the one prior to this, we really tried to come back to that original place that people connected to.
Welcome to episode 150 of the Bass Shed podcast. My name is Ryan Roberts. What's up, folks? Welcome to the Bass Shed podcast. My name is Ryan Roberts, and if this is your first time checking out the show, please make sure to hit subscribe wherever you are listening to it. And if you are watching on YouTube, please make sure to hit subscribe and hit the little bell to get notified about bass content that is released regularly. All right. On this show is Adam Russell. Adam Russell is the bassist for the band Story of the Year. Story of the Year is a band that came out of the early 2000s post-hardcore scene and has built a long-standing career through high-energy records, consistent touring, and a sound that has stayed recognizable. Adam's been a part of that whole arc from their rise during that era, right, the early 2000s, to where they are now, continuing to write and record and perform at a high level with over 25 years in. We're going to get into the latest recording by the group Story of the Year. The album is titled A.R.S.O.N, which is an acronym. We're going to get into what that album represents and how that band marks the return to their roots with a more personal direction. We also talk about his role on bass, how that is developed over time, and what it takes to stay consistent in a band built around high energy. More on my conversation with Adam Russell in just a second, but first, there's a couple things I want to talk about. LemurMusic.com. If you play upright bass, you probably already know Lemur Music. They've been serving the bass community for decades with a great selection of strings, accessories, sheet music, and bass gear. Stop by, check out their inventory, LemurMusic.com. Use the promo code TheBassShed, all one word, for 10% off. All right, folks, I'm excited to tell you about the book I put together with bass legend Jerry Jamont. Jerry Jamont, 15 Timeless Bass Lines. Jerry Jamont, 15 Timeless Bass Lines explores 15 classic bass lines from Jamont's incredible career. The lines that help define the sound of soul and R&B recordings by artists like Aretha Franklin, King Curtis, and so many more. You can find Jerry Jamont 15 Timeless Bass Lines at thebassshedacademy.org or click on the link in the show notes below. All right, as I mentioned, Adam Russell, bassist of the group Story of the Year, is on the podcast. This was a good hang. This was a really good hang with Adam. It starts off talking about Star Wars, so there's that. That kind of deviates from normal programming. I can't remember a time I've ever talked about Star Wars on this podcast, but we do, and I I admit that I'm guilty of not knowing anything about Star Wars. But Adam straightens me out on some of that and gives me a perspective on how to approach Star Wars. We also talk about the bass. Go figure. On the Bass Shed podcast, we talk about the bass. We talk about Story of the Year's latest album release titled A.R.S.O.N. We talk about some technology elements that are in the group, how that, what their recording process has been like over the years. We talk about the technology and playback rigs that they're using on the live stage show, what it's like keeping energy up during a live stage performance. A lot of things that relate to doing this and playing this kind of music at a high level for such a long time. I mean, ultimately, that's what this conversation is about. It's about longevity. It's about maintaining an artistic identity and continuing to grow with a band that does it at such a high level for so long. And here it is. Here's my talk with bassist of Story of the Year, Adam Russell. Oh, killer, dude. You got a good little background going on there, too.
I'm a podcaster, I'm a fucking middle-aged white dude, so it is to be expected.
Are you? Are you a podcaster?
Yeah, I got a Star Wars podcast with a couple other band dudes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the bass player of Bayside and Ryan Keys, the singer of Yellow Card. We have a Star Wars podcast, and what's rad is that Ryan, over the years, just repeatedly, it's like every other music guest we have on, who's also a Star Wars fan, ends up being a bass player. So he's always
Really?
outnumbered. It's great. We always outnumber the lead singers. We defy the memes.
Confession, I've never seen any of them.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, so I mean, you can, if you want to log off now and just.
No, it's all good. You're one of the target audiences. We have a great episode about what order to watch all the movies for the first time.
What is the order? I mean, obviously the old ones first, right?
Not necessarily.
Oh, okay. Let's get into this.
In the episode, we each kind of gave our own take on what we think is the best order from like different perspectives. Mine was just straight up like storytelling, how to preserve all the reveals and tell the story and get you into the universe and all that shit. So it is kind of convoluted, and off the top of my head, I don't know if I could recite it. Like I have a note in my phone that I send to people.
Okay.
But it's like, if you know the numbers, you know that the originals in the 70s started with 4, 5, 6, and then went back and did the prequels, right? So I'm pretty sure it's 1, 2, 4, Rogue One in the middle of 4 at a key moment, finish 4.
You got to stop one like halfway
5.
through and watch a whole other movie?
If you want to do it like Tarantino style, or like you're in the middle of the season of Lost or something with flashbacks.
Okay.
Yes, I think it's a really cool experience. You don't have to, but you know, I had this whole convoluted thing. I'm going to make a video about it in the next month because there's a movie coming out in May.
There's another one coming out?
Yeah, a Mandalorian movie based on the characters from the series. So,
is that what they're doing now? Are they just like doing spin-offs? Like, I know that it still exists, and actually, a good friend of mine does all the music for him. I think he's still doing it. I know he was.
What's his name?
Jermaine Stiegel.
That sounds a little familiar. Is he?
I think he was composing for him.
Yeah, they have a ton of composers across all the different series, and like the main composers, of course, have like their assistants and their teams and shit.
Right.
Like, I'd be interested to see which one he's been on.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen him in a long time, and I know they just keep like pumping them out, and I have no idea what's going on with them. To me, they're like the Marvel movies or the comic book.
Yeah,
thing.
I mean,
like they're just pumping them out all over the place, and I don't even know what's going on with any of it.
It is tough to find an entry point, which I think is like why I want to make that video, but. The Mandalorian movie, you could probably just go watch a handful of the new series. Like, actually, The Mandalorian, you can watch as a standalone thing, and you don't need to know shit.
Okay.
Because it's written as, like, a new character who exists in the universe, and, like, the people he interacts with and everything, it's all relevant, but you don't need to know. Like, you can just turn off that part of your brain where culturally you're like, well, I got to catch up. Like, you don't really have to.
Okay, you can just hop in.
Yeah. And then it might make you want to go back and see the other stuff that is all connected to. It's pretty rad.
All right. We might come back to that actually, but until we do, let's talk about your new record.
Let's do it.
All right. This is the 8th record for the group Story of the Year, correct? Which you are the bassist?
It is the 7th studio album. So if you count like the 10th anniversary reimagining of our first album, we could call it 8.
Okay.
But none of us really count that as like a proper studio album for obvious reasons. No new tracks, just reimagined.
Okay. How is it reimagined? What'd you do? To just like remixing it? Like take the same files and just zhuzh up the mix? Or did you do something creative?
Sort of like some semi-acoustic versions and like different, tapping into some different genres. We did it with a friend in St. Louis. We didn't like go full blown, back to the original producer or anything. So there's some cool moments on it. It's not like the greatest shit we've ever made, but it's cool to check out if you're a fan of the first album.
Cool. This the band is Story of the Year. The album is All Rage, Still Only Numb. Let's talk about this title.
So A.R.S.O.N. was the title that we landed on. There was the first like unanimous title that we had, and it's from a lyric from the first single, Gasoline. Mm-hmm. But Dan spells it out A.R.S.O.N. in the lyric, and he was just spelling it out. You know what I mean? It's just like you would do in a hip hop song or whatever. It wasn't meant to be an acronym. So as a title, the other dudes were like, I don't know, is it a little too fucking cheeky or something to kind of like have this arson title. And design wise, it looks really nice with the periods between it, making it look like an acronym. So we created a backronym, as they
Okay.
call it,
Right. Reverse engineering the acronym. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that title, I think we each have our like own personal interpretation, again, because we kind of like a hive mind reverse engineered it. So to me, it's kind of like it's kind of about the catharsis you get from just fucking hulking out sometimes and like letting the rage take over, like the think of like a scene in a movie where
You don't strike me as someone who's like ridiculously over the top aggro. I could be wrong. Like I just met you, but
I'm not. I mean,
okay.
I'm like, I do have a history. That like, there's a joke in the band, like they call it Chernobyl. Like when I would, like we got really into ping pong on making our second album. I mean, we had like a chart on the wall of the wins and losses and stuff. And when I would get frustrated with myself and losing, and our old guitar player especially knew how to really press my buttons, I would just like melt down.
You just lose it all over ping pong. This is like high stakes ping pong.
Yeah, I mean, because like I'm not into sports. I don't fuck with sports ball, but all of the nerdy like autistic sports I'm super into. Like I'm really into bowling and ping pong, and I got into darts for a minute, golf, like the stuff where like you're playing against yourself more than anything.
I mean, aren't they all?
Yeah, but team sports are different. You know what I mean?
That's true.
So when I would lose at ping pong, I was mad at myself. It was like, fuck, why didn't I like playing video games? Like, why? I know I can get past this level. Like, what the fuck's wrong with me? So I would just melt down. So there's that part that comes from like my neurodivergence and ADHD and all that kind of shit. So this title kind of speaks to that.
Okay.
That ultimately, like,
after listening to the record, at no point would I have correlated it to ping pong. Like none. Like those,
we contain
those
multitudes.
Are not in my notes at all.
Yeah. Well, I think ultimately, like I was going to reference like a scene in a movie where somebody is. I'm thinking like a movie like Horrible Bosses or something like that, where there's a moment when someone's like really just taking it from some asshole, some piece of shit, or the person is a piece of shit and they're visualizing in the moment. Like there's a scene in The Boys where Homelander has this vision of just like mowing down the whole crowd with like his laser beam eyes and just killing these hundreds of people, right? Mm-hmm. And for a second you think it's real, and then it snaps back and it just goes back to his face. And that was just in his head in the moment, like right. What he wanted to unleash upon the world. And I think that title is that. Like you think there's catharsis in just raging, but ultimately in the end it isn't helpful, and you remain in this like numb state of not knowing how to navigate your emotions and just having to live with them.
Okay. All right. So
we are an emo band after all.
Is that a narrative that comes up in the band regularly? Is emotional awareness?
I wouldn't say awareness in any kind of like elevated level where we're any kind of like, self-help
right.
personalities, but sure. We do have a foundation in emo music. That's, emo, hardcore, post-hardcore, punk, everything else. And the album we made that, introduced us to the world was very much in that space, being like wearing your emotions, what's the expression? Wearing it on your sleeve, when we were influenced by bands like Saves the Day and Motion City Soundtrack and other bands that like lyrically got into some real imagery, so that's the foundation there. And this album and the one prior to this, we really tried to come back to that original place that people connected to, kind of stray away from political, social stuff that was too on the nose and really speak to like human emotion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Uh, for listeners just learning about the group, maybe through this podcast or through this record, how would you explain or describe the identity of the band as it is right now?
Like I said, we have, a foundation in emo, post-hardcore. I mean, I would say if you really want to define us, we're a post-hardcore band with emo leanings. But, like bands in the 70s and 80s who weren't hair metal, who said, okay, fine, call us hair metal. Yes, put us on the bills with those hair metal bands. We kind of embrace emo as like the larger scene that we're a part of, right? But this album and the last album really go back to our roots in terms of our influences and our roots as like our original sound, but update those. So now we live in this space that like is working at active rock radio, for example, but to us is still rooted in hardcore, post-hardcore, and then earlier than that, like bands from the 90s like Smashing Pumpkins, Deftones. I mean, there's still like a little grunge in there, Rage Against the Machine, some new metal, especially when we get into the riffier stuff. I mean, Limp Bizkit even, so we are kids of the 90s. We're all in our mid 40s. So it, like many bands' albums later in their catalog where they try to preserve their sound, but then find a way for their original influences to come through, or they just naturally do. Mm-hmm. We're kind of in that space now where we're still that emo hardcore band, but I mean, the stuff Ryan writes now, I think fits more on like a Deftones album sometimes than it does a hardcore album.
Is the the pursuit to preserve a sound something that's important to the band, or do you guys just kind of go where it goes and evolve as it evolves?
Both. I think we don't like want to lose sight of either side of that artistic endeavor, because we do, making music for us isn't a one-way street. Ultimately, I feel like any art should be for the artist first, which it is for us. Like, we're not going to play anything that we don't love. Mm-hmm. We're not going to love all of our songs equally, but we're sure as shit not going to play something and make something just to fit a mold or a business plan that doesn't resonate with us, and it will be a little bit different for each member, yada, yada, but it still has to work for us. That said, we've always written songs with the crowd and the live experience in mind. I mean, I remember being in the rehearsal space working on songs for the first album, and we would be playing a verse chorus back and forth and thinking like, okay, well, the intro and then into the rip, like it needs to be jumping here. Like the whole vibe needs to be the crowd jumping, so we would like kind of work out parts and arrangements based on vibes like that. Mm-hmm. And the dynamics really of things. And for us, it was, I think I speak for everybody to some degree, where it's not like we wanted to like win in the sense of like being a big band. It's more like we wanted to just do the things that we saw all of our heroes doing. Like when you're at a show and you see everybody jumping, like, fuck, I want that. We have to have a part in the song where just we can say everybody jump and it just hits and yada yada.
Sure.
So in that sense, we are aware of how it's received. So we are writing for fans and writing for live performances, I guess, in that sense. And then the lyrical part is with that same kind of mentality. Like we have to vibe with it. Dan isn't going to sing something, and we would do this in writing sessions. He'd say, "No, I would never say that." Like somebody else would throw out a line. Now that's a little too that's too weak of a line. Like emotionally, I want to say something stronger, But still, the conscious choice to shy away from overtly political and social stuff and lean more into the emotional connection is with the listener in mind, like what they connected with originally and who we are, what our identity is as a band.
Mm-hmm. You've used the phrase a few times, and for clarification, for me, you've hardcore and post-hardcore.
Hmm.
Does that happen? How would you classify the two sounds? And also, is there a timeline in which you think like, okay, the hardcore music has now turned into this new thing? Either there's a prominent record within the genre or a predominant year or something where it's like, okay, this there's a shift in the sound now.
Yeah, I think hardcore, comes out of hardcore punk, right? That can go back into the 80s, and I mean, arguably, like you can, I don't know, it's all arbitrary. You can call a lot of bands through the evolution of punk different things, right? But bands that started to be more straight up hardcore, I feel like in our experience at our age was like early mid 90s. A lot of like bands from the Northeast, a lot of like New York, New Jersey, Long Island kind of area. And then, I'm thinking bands that are just straight up like screaming vocals, like a lot of like Sick of It All, um, Snapcase. Those are hardcore bands, straight up hardcore bands from the 90s for us. Post hardcore, in my mind, is Glassjaw, Thursday. Um, Taking Back Sunday sits on the fringe of that, leaning into the emo. Like they're part of like kind of the same generation as us, coming from post hardcore. Um, but in my mind, it's that New Jersey, New York, Long Island sound that is from the very late 90s, early 2000s. Refused is in there. Boy Sets Fire, I guess, would count. Again, it's all like arbitrary, but Glassjaw was a huge influence for us for sure. Thrice, actually, like on the West Coast, they were kind of like post-hardcore, but with more of like a metal, um, early metalcore kind of thing, I guess. But they are part of that Venn diagram to me.
Okay. What are the what are the defining characteristics of each of these subgenre terms?
I don't know. I think it's all bullshit ultimately, but like, it's still interesting to talk about. And like when people ask what kind of band we are, like, you got to have an answer.
Sure.
Or what kind of bands do you like? But it's all like, and so much of it is done in hindsight, because most people, most like artists with integrity, I feel like don't set out to be part of a scene. You just find yourself in a scene.
Just
sometimes
do what you do, and then
yeah. Sometimes you rebel against it. Sometimes you like fully embrace it. Different stages, So, I mean, all of the different labels and nomenclatures and shit go back to the very beginning of music. And I imagine at the time, like, no one was sitting behind a giant grand piano wearing a big poofy coat saying, well, I just want to write something really Baroque.
Right. Right. Okay. So you guys don't really try to live up to any of those identities, or
no.
Just
again, we embrace what works. Like we're happy to be called an emo band and be part of this resurgence, but we're still just writing music for us and for people who want to hear things from us.
Yeah. With 7 albums out, how long has the band been together?
I mean, our first album was 2003. This lineup was like, it had been a couple years prior to that, but the band itself goes back to like 95. The couple original guys playing together in high school. I mean, all 3 of the others playing together in high school in different configurations, different bands. I joined in 2000, I think. I was in another local band where Ryan, our guitar player, played with me in that kind of new metal band. So, we're a good 25 years in now as this lineup. And like I said, we had a former guitar player. We were a 5-piece, but this 4-piece is the absolute original lineup. So,
okay.
And that's rare. So I feel great about that.
Yeah. How do you guys, after doing this band for so long, and everyone ages and life changes and you get more responsibilities and all that stuff, how has that impacted the music? How do you still rock hard Like that's a weird way to say that.
Yeah.
How do
How
you
do you
still like?
stay rock hard?
Yeah. How do you still like, be a high energy rock band? Let's use that. And when you're in your mid 40s, when you're just like, it's 11 o'clock and I want to go home.
Yeah, I mean, it gets more and more challenging. Obviously, like everything hurts and I'm dying
Yeah.
is kind of like the vibe. Um, but we set a high bar for ourselves early, and I don't think any of us is comfortable not still trying to meet that bar.
Hmm.
We understand that there are trade-offs. Like I know for sure we've never sounded better live than we do now. And some of that comes at the expense of the energy. Like we can't always be flipping out, literally flipping, falling down, just like climbing all over the whole fucking venue and playing as well as we need to. We used to be a 5-piece, so the other guitar player would do all the backing vocals except for some spots here and there. So I could just roam freely throughout the fucking venue and end up standing on the bar at some point in the set. Now I have to hold down the vocals so I don't have those opportunities as much. So there's like this balance of maintaining the energy. I mean, we take it seriously like anything else. Being in shape and being ready for tour is part of our job. So we want and need to do that. And I also look at it like such a lucky, kind of like a lucky way for things to pan out, where my job just happens to keep me in shape as an old person. I took for granted for so long how in shape I was by just being on tour. So when we were home for a long time and like I left the band for a few years, I had a normal day job. I did not realize how much my job was keeping me in shape, and it really hit at that moment. So yeah, we try to maintain a balance of playing well, sounding good, still having energy. And then the nice part is that our fans are getting older too. So as long as we're still ahead of them and still making them think, fuck, I don't know how you guys do it up there, we're succeeding on some level,
This is maybe about like I don't know, sometime within the last year, I was doing this gig down in Laguna, and a member of a famous pop punk band walks in. I'll tell you after the interview is over who it was, but I just don't want to drop the name. So he walks in and wants to sit in, and he sat in, and he was cool and all that stuff. And I remember texting a drummer on my way home who grew up listening to this band, like, yo, man, so-and-so just came through, kind of weird to play with him. And the drummer who I text, he's like, man, isn't it funny? Like they start out so punk, and then like they get some fame, it just turns into another rich white dude. I'm like, yeah, that's totally what happened. Like, how do you keep the punk ethos and the energy and all that stuff when, like, well, I'm a homeowner now, or whatever it might be, and you got more stability in your life, and you maybe have a family or whatever. How do you keep the raw aggression that you might have had in your 20s active?
Yeah, that's a question for everyone, and a similar question for any kind of artist coming from any kind of, angsty youth perspective in the beginning. For us, that punk rock mentality was just being fucking wild and not giving a shit what anyone thought in the beginning. And that's still there because we can't ever grow out of that immature mindset. So there's like that part of punk rock, the, fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. Rage is a kind of a rap metal band, but very fucking punk rock, right? In that sense. And we still have that in the sense that we like can't turn off that Beavis and Butthead part of our brain. Like
solid reference.
Our most recent reel that we posted on Instagram for the album release show is us being as stupid as we've ever been, because we still have the same sense of humor, and it's that. And so since we came up in like the Blink-182 Jackass era, so much of our identity early on was just acting a fucking fool all the time. We got signed from a VHS tape that was half music and half us just acting like,
oh, really?
That, yeah.
I want to know about that story in a second. Yeah.
Rollerblading across the street naked, running into bushes with a shopping cart, like, setting our friends on fire with hairspray, like that kind of stuff. But then like the the aggression part of it and like the rage, I mean, that's only intensified for me on like a socio-political level, and like thinking
You
about
sure? Everything
um
that's going on in the world, right?
yeah, and trying to use what reach I have with solidarity in mind for people who, to your point about being, a middle-aged white dude with a home and stuff, uh, you know, help to be a voice and create some like sense of solidarity for other people who aren't sure whether or not they want to be vocal about how they feel about what's going on in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So none of it is forced for me. It's just like I can't help but continue to think that way. And coming out of, hardcore and punk roots, where it was very much about the message and community and being vocal and solidarity, it's just part of us.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's go back to two things, actually. You mentioned that you left the band for a little while and had a day job. What was it? How long were you gone? And
Excellent,
then what
sir.
brought you back?
I think I was officially out of the band for only 4-ish years, 3-4 years. I worked at Apple, actually,
Okay.
like just in retail. I went and just like applied for a normal like
Just like
salesman
Apple
on the floor
Store. Yeah. Okay.
kind of
Selling.
position. But like pretty quickly moved up to like this training kind of position. I was a creative, was the title, where I would do like workshops and training. Like it was a lot of like teaching boomers how to use their iPhones, but also
Yeah.
it was at a time where they did this big focus on it was called Today at Apple, where they wanted to do more actual creative workshops and things, and they started putting those big screens in the stores. So I got to do a lot of like other art, drawing and using things like Procreate and doing some filmmaking stuff and teaching people that and getting to, like open up Logic and start making a beat and actually have my bass in the store and make music in the store.
That's
And then
cool.
I would also get to teach, new hires and things like that. So getting to have that creative side and also learn a bunch of normal adult skills that I completely went around as being a person in a band, not having to deal with that kind of real adult life shit. It was so good for me.
Okay.
And what brought me back ultimately was just like missing the kind of boundless artistic freedom that being in a band gives you, as compared to being allowed to have this kind of creative side of a very corporate job. You know what I mean? Still one of my favorite companies ever, but clearly I couldn't go do a backflip off the table and do a fart joke, right?
I mean, you could.
We'll be back right after this.
Folks, if you're digging this episode, there's a way to be more involved with this show. With the Bass Shed Backstage Pass, you can submit questions for future guests and be a part of the podcast. You'll also get access to extras like the 5 Spot, which is a rapid-fire look at how each guest responds to different aspects of bass culture, plus extended conversations, behind-the-scene moments, and other podcast extras. There's also lessons and transcriptions through the Bass Shed Academy to support your playing. If you want in, hit the link below or scan the QR code on the screen. Backstage Pass. Take part in the Bass Shed podcast. All right, folks, the Woodshed Bass. The Woodshed Bass is a bass that is a collaboration between Woodcraft Guitars and the Bass Shed. The Woodshed Bass is designed for players that want a classic look, reliability, and a bass that cuts in a mix with a lot of tonal options. Check it out, the Woodshed Bass.
Excellent, sir.
How did having that kind of stability and regularity impact your playing and what you came back to the band with?
Honestly, the biggest thing is I got paid basically to learn audio engineering. I got to sit around and tinker with things. I got Logic for free. I got to sit there and hang, and I was friends with a bunch of musicians. There are a lot of artists that work at Apple. That's just kind of inherent. And I learned
true?
audio.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty go-to job for musicians, artists of any kind, actors, people. It's just Apple's always kind of been at that intersection. Steve Jobs would famously say they're at the intersection of technology and the liberal arts.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's much different now. They're a much bigger company, but when I started, 10 years ago or whatever, it was still very much that. So, I got to hang out and learn how to use Logic and like talk with my friends and share tips and stuff. And like I started a podcast during the pandemic while I was still there, so I was using Logic there and just like really immersing myself in like the creative or like the technical and like engineering aspects of music that I hadn't necessarily needed to take the time to learn.
Mm.
So coming back to the band, that was also, a time when we'd started using a click track and some backing tracks for some basic things like strings and other instrumentation, that we couldn't play live. So by the time I got there, we were leveling that up a little bit more, doing in-ears and all that kind of stuff. And I have become like the in-house technology guy. I build. Are
you running the playback rig like
fully?
At shows?
Yeah. And of course we've built it out with the help of like our front of house guy and other folks, but I've gotten lots of help from like Buddy from Senses Fail really helped me. But I'm like that's fully my job in the band. And at this point, it's like another instrument. You can't just like, we got that, and we'll just hit play and it's fine. Like having a playback guy is like a whole other like
right
tech position that you have to fill. So doing that and doing it in a way where like we understand what happens if we have some like catastrophic event, which we've had, it has to be somebody's responsibility in the band, especially if you can't afford to have some big ass crew. And I try to think about our band in the most minimalist way possible. So in the event that we do end up on the back of the hill again in this up and down career, if we have to be self-sufficient and we have nothing but like a TM front of house guy and we're teching our own shit, like I know what's going on inside that black box.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the biggest thing, and just being a more mature, like adult who can communicate better, not be a little shithead. Those are the things I got out of that time in corporate America.
Yeah. Tell me about the playback rig. I had a roommate for a while that was running the playback rig for a Disney artist he was touring with. And so I know a little bit about it just from hearing him talk about it. But so how many safety nets are built into this? So if like the first line goes down, how many backups do you have?
It's fully redundant. So we have two computers going at the same time, and that's all controlled externally by MIDI controllers. There's one sitting back on the road case, and there's one by our drummer. So like one of our drum techs, one of the two, when we have him, he will cue a lot of songs just, so Josh doesn't have to, as he's, swelling the cymbals through the transition, doesn't have to reach over and tap it, So we've got that. But Josh also has full control back there at the kit. And those run into an interface. It's called Play Audio 1U for anyone listening who cares. It's essentially like a dual audio interface. It's got 12 outs or 16 outs, something like that. And it has the redundancy built in. So it's really like internally, almost like side by side two IOs. So it can detect any kind of blip on the A computer and immediately default over. Actually, not immediately. It can default over at whatever interval you want. Like if you want 2 milliseconds to be the amount of time it gives that computer to respond correctly, and if it doesn't, bam, it's over to computer B. You can set it that way. If you want it to wait 10 seconds, you can do it that way, whatever. So we have it set pretty quickly to just default over. And if the second one shits the bed or the whole thing goes down.
Does it go back to rig A? Or just like once rig A has gone off the radar, and now you're using rig B, then what happens? Does it go back and it keeps toggling, or you have to have something else?
I don't think it toggles back automatically, but in the software, you literally just click, back to A, and you can also do it on the front of the thing. So typically, like if we've had stuff in the past before we fully understood what our issues were, something would happen, and then between songs we would tap back to A, check something. Okay, it's good. We'll stay back on A. But they're in sync. Like we hit play externally, and because those are connected to the interface instead of the computers, you hit play and you see both playheads moving at the same time, side by side. It's fucking sick. Like, and I love technology, so this just gives me a computer boner when I see all this working. We're using Ableton, which is ideal for this. I don't like Ableton as software. I don't like the UI. I don't like the UX, but like it was DJ software to start with, and it's so MIDI centric that like triggering Ryan's program changes on his line 6, and same thing with mine, and doing all these things, it's seamless and flawless. Logic is great, and I know Logic like with my eyes closed, but it's just not built for this. So we use Ableton, and it has our entire catalog in one session. So in sequence, all of our songs, every album in sequence. And then we use a set list plugin called AbleSet, which takes all of the markers that we put at the beginning of every track and makes a list of all your songs, and you just rearrange those. So as you're going through the set, the playhead's popping back and forth throughout this long timeline. And then you can also add markers at the ends of songs. So if you wanted to just stop there and wait for someone to press play, you can have a marker that says stop. Or you can have a marker that just says song end. And if your default setting is to keep playing, when it reaches the end, it knows to jump to the next one, so we can directly link without Josh having to touch a thing.
Okay.
So I set all that up ahead of time. We work through the set, and then I go in and kind of work out the nitty gritty of the timing in the sequence, and I'll make an adjustment. We'll play it. How's that? A few more seconds? Cool. And we kind of preset all of that. But then we also have control. Josh can just tap through the buttons to pick any song. We keep a couple at the end sometimes, if we're going to do like potentially a different song, or if we're doing a thing in soundcheck and we want access to those, whatever. And there's all this even deeper stuff that you can get into if you really want to like give yourself fluidity and like a little flexibility, which we will continue to get in over time. But it's just like, it's daunting if you're not a computer person, or even if you are, to get it started. Seems but like once you build it all, it's like, it's the best thing, because it simplifies, especially like flyouts and stuff. We've got all these different scenarios, different. It used to be like, you think about backline, like you're going to go do a show, you fly and rent gear. It's like, what head am I going to get? Am I going to get the right one? Is it going to be beat to shit and not work? Is it going to sound good? Is it going to yada, yada? Then we start using amp modelers, and that simplifies a little more. And then we get to the point where it's just like no cabs, and it's just DI, line 6s for both of us, and the tracks, and, all the stuff that creates this like supportive foundation. We're to the point now where it's 4 road cases, and that's, aside from the drums, that's like everything. 4 road cases, like 4 6-bass road cases is everything we need to make the show sound exactly the same everywhere in the world. And
so there's no amps on stage?
No more cabs. It's just like, it's simpler for the mix out, and creates more consistency.
That doesn't seem very rock.
Yeah, it felt weird for a long time.
Yeah,
and definitely not since we're all on in-ears, we don't have wedges in the front anymore, which I hated. We all hated. It's like, what do I do with my hands? But except in this case, it's what do I do with my feet? Like,
right. Yeah, so, you can't. You got to like get a new power stance. You can't do the monitor. That's a whole thing.
And for us, just running around like it's running up and down and across those monitors and everything, and just acting a fucking fool. So if we don't have risers with us for the front to act as that kind of like, footrest kind of vibe and stand up on, we'll just request that they leave the wedges out.
Okay.
And, nothing's coming out of them. And then in back, it has been weird to not have stuff back there, just like the topography of the stage feels really naked,
Right.
you know? So we've
And
tried
just feeling the air move. Like, I'm not a big
that
fan
too,
of
yeah.
playing with in-ears and doing that thing because you can't feel the air move. You can't feel it move off the drums. You can't feel it move off your own cab. It's a totally different feel.
Yeah, not having a bass cab back there is one thing that sucks. I do miss that. And we used to always have 2 bass cabs. You know, Ryan and I, you know, as a 4-piece, we're doing 2 cabs on each side. You know, we would have, we wouldn't split our stuff up. I would have one of his cabs and one of my bass cabs and vice versa on the other, because I did like that feel and just like the rumble. But then also that changes the sound venue to venue because every stage is built differently, you know? So you get a wood stage and, you know, some like little venue that just becomes a giant sub and it's resonating. You get all these overtones and then it starts to fuck with your ears and like your human ears.
Yeah.
And then you get on a concrete stage and everything sounds dead. And there's this venue in New York in Times Square that is the deadest room possible because it's underneath a theater.
Okay.
And it sounds so bizarre, even with ears. So like minimizing all of that variability makes for like a way better experience overall. And we all have pretty good in-ears, like the triple driver, like plenty of bass and stuff. And our drummer hits so fucking hard that if I'm close to the drums and I've got my bass, you know, up in my ears like I typically do, kind of higher in the mix,
sure,
the kick drum hitting me in the chest and the bass in my ears really still feels pretty fucking rock and roll.
Yeah. What amp are you modeling in this signal chain?
I don't remember because the Line 6 stuff isn't named for like the actual real world amp. There's like licensing shit involved, of course. So it's got some like different name, but I think there's like kind of a dark glass preamp thing in the signal chain. Again, the names don't directly correspond.
Right.
But it's, you know, it's got that like classic Ampeg kind of like foundation to it.
Okay.
And a little overdrive mixed in, you know, there's kind of a blend there. And then I've got a chorus that I put on in 2 specific bridges. There are different overdrives for different parts of different songs.
Do those
I don't
effects,
have it fully dialed in yet.
Are those effects automated? So when it hits the chorus of a certain tune, that the automation will automatically apply the effect?
It is now, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, that's how we started doing Ryan stuff first, because otherwise he's just tap dancing his pedal board the whole time.
Right. Yeah, I thought guitar players were into that though.
Yeah, I mean, with us as high energy as we want to be, and now being a 4-piece, where it's not like, you know, they could kind of split those between the 2 guitar players before, where it's not like one person had to create every tone for every part appropriately. Right. It could kind of be like, okay, you're doing that kind of half distortion part there, and I'm going to come in with the so-and-so thing. So they could kind of split it. Now, Ryan, it's just like, if he has to stay by his pedal board, it kills the energy of the show.
Right.
Just and there's stuff with like,
wise.
Yeah. And then there's stuff with like the pitch shift, like the digital capo or whatever they call it, where, you know, he's not playing 7 strings and stuff like that, but we have songs that are in A sharp, B, stuff like that at that lower octave. So he's got that. And there are some songs where in the studio, because it's just let's just make the song, figure out how to play it live later, kind of like, oh, this sounds great. Yeah, I could play this. There's the song Disconnected. Pretty sure it's Disconnected on the new album. The way he was playing it to get the tonality of like the voicing, the specific voicing and fingering on the fretboard at that spot, to get that tonally correct, he wanted to stay here, but he had to move the root note that the progression was moving through on the low string, but it couldn't be done that way.
Right.
You could find a way to play it. It can be done. But to do it in the studio, I stood there and over his shoulder, and I waited to just, you know, press on the 10th fret or whatever it was for that part. So that's how we recorded it.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to doing it live, obviously someone's not going to stand there and do that. So instead, he worked out this thing where he's like, well, if I pitch shift the whole thing a step and I play it here, it's the right thing. So mid part, through one turnaround of the riff, it pitch shifts 3 or 4 times, I think.
Oh, wow.
Just to make it like playable in a way where he can move to it. It's comfortable to play. And there can be a performance element and not just this dude doing fucking Yngwie Malmsteen hand stretches, you know? Right. So yeah, without Ableton telling his line 6 what to do constantly part to part, it would be a lower energy show. Mm-hmm. And that's what's important to us. That's what sounds the best. It's what's important on the energy level. And now I've got it doing the same shit with my bass. And I didn't need it all. It's bass. In our band, it's not like, you know, I'm not Les Claypool, like I'm the bass player, right? So it wasn't essential to have all the shit, but now that I can, and I can dial in the tones song to song, part to part a little better and automate it, it's fucking awesome. Like I look over at the computer and I look at my line 6 and watch the lights turn on and off. And again, computer boner. It's amazing.
Are you running like an octaver or anything to get some of those like super deep thick bass sounds?
No octaver. There are some spots on this current and the last album especially where there's a bunch of really dope actual synth on the album, bass synth and different things. And we just put those on tracks to like, because matching the tones, that's tricky. So I would rather have my like live bass tone that matches as well as possible the album bass tone, and then the actual synth from the album, rather than trying to like do a different version of it that I cobbled together myself. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because also like if obviously I'm moving with the roots of that bass synth, you know, you can't go too far when you're in that frequency range. It starts to turn into shit mud, right? But I'm not playing exactly what the synth is playing. So to get it right, I keep those things separate.
Were you involved in the production of the album on this, dealing with a lot of these things, more so than just being part of the band? Were you a little bit more at the helm of production?
No, not yet. I feel like I would like to get there. The last one, Josh and I were still working day jobs as we were making that album, as we were like starting to ramp up to become a full-time band again. So we were back and forth. So our studio time was limited there. And then this most recent one, since we did it in LA and we live in St. Louis, it was a little bit of the same dynamic of just going in and out as needed for budgetary reasons. So we didn't get to spend as much time in the studio. And because we also, you know, the dude who produced it, the majority of it, Colin Britton, he had joined Linkin Park as their drummer in the process. So we were at the mercy of their schedule. So the recording process was stretched out over almost 2 years.
Oh, wow.
So it's not like the old days where we would go to the studio and be there every fucking day for 6 weeks and get to like really have our hands in everything. It was kind of like, I mean, there were some trips where like only 2 of us went out and we track certain things and come home, and then someone else would do something and you'd hear a mix and go, oh shit, that's in the song now? That's sick. You know? So unfortunately there weren't as many opportunities to really get in. That was a long answer, but like going forward, yeah, I would like to more.
Where in LA did you track?
We did it at a few different places. The studio called the Steakhouse in North Hollywood is where we did drums and most of the guitar and bass. And then at Colin Britton's home studio in Studio City. And also Dan Book, who was another producer on the album, his home studio, we did quite a bit there. So all the vocals at those 2 spots.
Okay.
You know, the home studios, and then everything else, the majority of everything else at the Steakhouse.
I've heard of this Steakhouse. Is that I used to live in North Hollywood, and that's where my old roommate has his studio. Is that the studio with the big white cow? If it is, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If it's not, you have no idea, and that seems really weird.
No, it's not, and I don't know why it's called the Steakhouse
Okay.
because it
Okay.
doesn't look anything like a steakhouse. It's
Sure.
just kind of a
A nondescript.
it's a really unassuming building,
Right.
with a
There's so
cinder
many
block wall,
studios.
and
Yeah, there's so many studios up there, and like you don't really know that's even what it is until you're told.
for sure.
But there's this place with if it's still there, I don't know. I haven't been there in a while, but yeah, there's like a big window on the upstairs of this two-story building, and there's a big window, and in the window is just like this huge, I'm assuming like porcelain white cow that just
Yeah.
hangs out there. Excuse me. I never knew the name of that studio, but I knew it was a studio. Being that the band has been around for so long, how have you guys navigated the music industry through all the changes that it's gone through? And how are you
Oh,
still?
dude.
I mean, it's a
Yeah.
never-ending process. By the time I feel like just by the time a model sets in about how to pursue something, it changes again.
Absolutely. Yeah. We always say, Ryan and I specifically always say, we caught the death rattle of the old model, where we signed a traditional deal with Maverick Records, and it was a tiny deal by 2003 standards, a really solid deal by today's standards. We didn't get much of an advance at all. I think we got 30 grand total that we split up to basically pay off credit card debt and, keep us living in our 3-bedroom house in Orange County while we made the album. Bought us a little gear or whatever, but 12 points on the album, and or on the deal, 3-album deal, mini max system, all this like really traditional shit. Did 2 albums with Maverick, then they folded into Warner, and we got not picked up by Warner, essentially. So like soft dropped as they like. It was wild actually when I don't know if you've heard the story, but Maverick was us, Deftones, Mest, Alanis Morissette, some other like 90s bands. It was Madonna's label under Warner. And
what year is this?
She started it in the mid 90s. So the first Deftones album was 95. So it was probably a little bit before that. She sold off her portion of it, her ownership of it, just sold it back to Warner and kind of got out of the deal. I want to say 2005-ish, right before our second album. So all the Warner bands ended up kind of a little bit in this, like, not limbo, but in a spot where it was like Warner's like redheaded stepchild, like, all right, let's go through in the meeting, talk about all the bands that we have on the slate. And okay, what's going on with the Maverick bands? And they were sort of like, their slice of the pie was the same. All of us together, our slice of the pie was the same as each individual band on Warner proper. So that was our first kind of like big lesson into like, hey, this isn't all just going to pan out like the first one did. Shit changes. This is a cutthroat kind of fucking wild industry. And then when they fully folded Maverick into Warner, they assessed a few that, like, obviously, like Alanis Morissette, that's going to Warner, some of the others, and then certain bands they just cut off the bottom. We were one of those, based on like what they would have owed us for the third album based on the contract we signed. Mm-hmm. That math, as compared, throwing in like what our second album sold versus our first one, they're like, yeah, we're not giving them that much money. They're done, But then fucking Deftones had to showcase for Warner Brothers to stay on the label.
Oh, wow.
Deftones. This was after White Pony. Like, they weren't automatically picked up by Warner like you would expect. I mean, look at them now. They're the fucking Deftones.
We're still talking about the same timeline. We're still talking about 05, 06. That.
Yeah, right in there, like 2005. Yeah. Deftones had to re-showcase 3 albums in after the success of White Pony to stay on Warner Brothers.
Okay.
So that's how gnarly shit was getting.
Right.
We're I guess 5-6 years post Napster and LimeWire and all that, and was really hitting the fan. So we ended up getting dropped. We were in limbo for a while, and for us, it went from like, oh, this fucking record label bullshit, like fucking drop us, dude, like whatever, to oh fuck, never mind, Control Z, I take it back, freaking the fuck out. We ended up getting picked up by Epitaph, which was incredible. Our third album got all the love from Brett Gurwitz and the folks at Epitaph. We did a second one with them, fulfilled that deal, and then went into like this unofficial hiatus because we've never been the kind of band to make smart business decisions like, hey, we should break up because it'll be good when we come back. It's like, no, you can't quit, fucking. So we ended up in this weird limbo because the scene was declining or evolving us out of it because we didn't evolve with it. And the whole model was changing. The way people were getting music was changing. And we were navigating that in like a really tough way. You know what I mean? Like just really feeling the slope of the back end of the hill. And Ryan and I, our guitar player and I, actually made a documentary about this whole thing. About
That's cool.
It was called Who Killed or Saved the Music Industry. And it never fully got released to the world. We did a Kickstarter and released it to all those backers. It's a whole other story as to why that didn't fully get released, but it was our film school in a way, and also our education into how and why things panned out the way they did, and gave us a much better understanding of the industry. And we interviewed a ton of people. I mean, there's a bunch of big names in that documentary, and it really became clear that there was not going to be a new model. It was going to be just like you said, every 6 months to a year, things are changing. It's going to continue to be a moving target. Like the days of being able to rely on a business model so much that people could write books about it.
Right. There's a standardized approach to it. Right.
That's fucking gone. Yeah. So, and it's also unfortunate because like all the shit we did in the early days with like, home video style filming things and releasing DVDs, like the Pantera, Metallica, and Korn and Blink-182 and whatever, like VHS tapes that we watched, that was going away too. But it was going to be a minute before social media started to take the place of that. So we were like early to the idea of like just putting it all out there, but late in terms of like late in our lives. Like we're too old to be doing social media the way kids do it now.
Sure.
It's also probably good because, like back then, some of the shit we did, it's probably good that wasn't going out on the internet to the entire world, So,
right. None of that is documented anywhere.
Yeah, pros and cons.
Yeah.
So it's been interesting, and the toughest part still for us as a band is marketing ourselves with social media in a way that feels genuine, or even in a way that we're like motivated to do, because we didn't grow up with it. Like you, right. I mean, I'm judging by the gray in your beard, just like we all have. Like,
yeah,
you didn't grow up putting every second of your life out to the world and assuming that's what you had to do as a citizen in society. So, right. Like, your perspective's different. It's like part of our job rather than just what we do.
Right.
And
no, I mean, I've had to learn it. Like, yeah, there's a lot of gray in this beard actually, and it's getting more and more. Probably since we even started the conversation.
Right.
I'm 44, and yeah, I have no relationship with social media. It's really difficult for me to engage with it in any way.
Yeah, same.
The look at me is not part of my personality in general, and then just having to do it is such a chore. I don't know how to do it. I don't really understand it. It's such a hurdle.
Yeah. Dude, what sucks is like, I understand it pretty well. Like I
mean, there's a tech component to it that I'm sure fascinates you.
Yeah, and I don't think any of my band would be offended by me saying this, but I think I understand it probably the best out of anyone in the band. Because for my Star Wars podcast, I really dug in and built our following on social media by learning how to game that system, and spent a lot of time just making fucking Star Wars memes and, understanding the algorithm.
Right. And it seems like that's a very specific audience. Like Star Wars folks, that's a cult. That is a deep cult.
Yeah. I mean, it's a modern mythology. It's like my religion. Yeah. So like, I really knew how to do that, but, and I was motivated to do it, but I wasn't putting myself out there. I was
Right.
like creating content that would compel people and bring them to the podcast.
Right.
Whereas like doing it for our band, it's still like our band and our music is so personal that even with my personal account, the majority of the time I post something, I write a caption. It could be a day or a week or a year later. I look back and I'm like, oh, fucking cringe. That's not cool. I don't like that. I just don't have that sense, like compulsion to just put my shit out there. I don't feel fucking cool about it at all.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
even posting pictures of me on stage, part of it's my OCD, like, oh, it's got to be the exact right pictures and yada, yada, yada. And part of it's like, I don't know, is this masturbatory at some point?
Sure.
Like,
Right.
so I kind of just default to revert to the band account being the important part, and even then we're bad at it.
Yeah. So the record came out February 13th, correct? Like full release?
Yes, yeah, we started releasing songs before end of last year. Like most albums, you kind of space it out now. We have a few festivals coming up. We're playing one in Orange County in I want to say Fullerton next month. It's called OC Super Show, I believe. I'm looking at it right now. Yep, OC Super Show with Aquabats. So that's a little festival.
Wow. That's a throwback.
And Lit and some other some other bands like that. We're playing Download in June over in the UK and coming immediately back to play Warped in DC. And then we really start to ramp everything up in the summer. So we're working on a tour that starts in July right now. It's going to be a pretty rad co-headliner. Still working on the routing, so that's as yet unannounced.
Did you talk about the headliner?
I don't think I can technically say it
Yeah,
yet,
that's cool.
But it's another band that it's a band that people that we have toured with, that we have a lot of overlap with, and people have been asking us to tour with more.
Okay.
So fans who really want to try to decode that sentence will probably have some good guesses.
Yeah.
And so we'll end up doing 2 legs with them, one in the summer, one in the fall. And we're trying to make some international stuff happen because, later in the end of summer, because we had this amazing festival booked that we were going to do in Australia. Parkway Drive was doing this thing called Park Waves. It was like 4 weeks across Australia, like half a dozen shows almost in every metro area. It was this big, sick bill. And they ended up canceling. And they canceled right before the holidays. So, the worst time possible for us to try to regroup and book something instead. So that left the first half of the year kind of open.
Mm-hmm.
No shade to them. It just ended up being bad timing for everyone. So most of our shit is happening the second half of the year, but we're going to hit it fucking hard starting in July.
All right, killer. And all that news will be up on the website and your socials and all those things.
Yeah, we've got Warped in Mexico City. We've got Warped in Long Beach, which will be in the middle of that tour. So a lot to come.
All right. That was my talk with Adam Russell, bassist of Story of the Year. So what I have to do, my homework, is to go back and check out what the order of the Star Wars was. Right? I didn't really jot that down in real time. I'm gonna have to go back. So one thing about that, I do have to go back and jot that down. Two, the reality of me actually pulling the trigger on that and watching the Star Wars in order, slim to none. You know what I mean? I feel like I've made it this far in life, haven't checked them out. So one, I atone for my Star Wars sins and go check them out. Or two, I just carry on what I'm doing. I don't know yet. I don't know. We'll see. I'll keep you posted, folks, about if I check out Star Wars or not. I don't know. I was watching this thing on Netflix last night about the idea of infinity, and I was really captivated about that. And I actually have a lot of thoughts on that. I'm not sure if Star Wars is going to slip into the programming or not, and I'm not sure why I'm talking this much about Star Wars. Having Adam on was great. Having Adam on was fantastic. A very self-aware approach, right? I love what he had to say about the importance of genres and those things. Like, that's a world I don't get into. That's a world I don't personally pursue. I'm not a rock guy. I don't do that thing. And so hearing about the culture of it is really fascinating to me. I did check out the record when preparing for this episode with Adam, and it is a slamming record. Like, for someone who doesn't, that's not my thing, is being a rock bass player. The record's killing. There's link in the show notes to all of it. Go check them out. Follow them on all the places where you follow people, legally. Don't be weird. And it's a fantastic band, and it was awesome having Adam on the show, and look forward to hearing more from him and from that band. If you want to hear more from Adam, there's more exclusive content at thebasshed.com, the Backstage Pass, where Adam plays the 5 spot, which is a really fun segment where we talk about other bass players. Kind of go through a little game about some other bass players that are within his wheelhouse. So if you want to hear more from Adam, please stop by and check out the Backstage Pass at thebasshed.com. All right, folks. That's about all I got for this one. I'll catch you on the next one in a minute.